Welcome to part 1 of the Access tutorial. I'm going to speak fairly quickly here, so if you need to rewind the video and rewatch it, feel free to do that at any point. In this first section, we're going to look over the very basics of Microsoft Access. So in this particular video, I'm going to be showing you the Dunder Mifflin Access database, which has some information on a fictional paper company in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and we will be using a different database for your project, but this is a good one to help students learn. So what I'm going to do is here's some files that we're going to use for this little database. We'll open up our Dunder Mifflin database, and here's how Access looks. Much like the rest of Microsoft Office, you'll notice that there's a ribbon across the top. We have these tabs. We have the Home tab, the Create tab, which we'll be using. On the Create tab, you might in the future create tables, but we won't be doing that for your project, but you'll definitely be creating queries using the Query Designer. We'll also be creating a form using the Form Wizard or a blank form. And then we probably won't be using creating reports this semester, but reports are very useful for printing out information from the database. The next tab is the External Data tab. External data is how you get data into the database or how you get data out of the database. And so we will be most primarily we'll be importing into the database. We'll play with importing from Excel and importing from text files. Exporting is fairly straightforward. We won't be doing it for this project. The next tab is the Database Tools tab. Most of the things on here are a little more advanced than we want to get to in MIS 101, and so what we'll be doing is simply looking at the Relationships tab. In fact, why don't we open that right now? The Relationships tab, or the Relationships tool, shows us all of the tables, all of the tables in our database and their relationships with one another. So we've talked about primary keys and foreign keys. Right here, this shows the relationships between those tables. So for example, we have a customers table in this database, and customers can make many orders. And so this relationship between customers and orders with customer ID as the key, primary key in the customer table and a foreign key in the orders table, it makes a one-to-many relationship. A customer can make many orders, but a particular order is only made by one customer. And so we can also look at the other tables in this database. For example, there's a sales reps database, which is kind of an employees database for Dunder Mifflin, and it's linked to the orders table so that we can calculate things like commission and who's responsible for the most revenue, for example. We also have order details, because on any given order, multiple products might be able to be ordered, and so we can look at the order details and how much it costs per item and how many reams of paper, for example, were purchased. On the left-hand side, we have all of what are called objects in our database. And there's only three that we're going to focus on. So we have the tables in our database. These are the two-dimensional rows and columns that we call fields and records within these tables that give us information. So for example, if we wanted to open up the sales representatives, the sales reps table, we can see all of the data that's in there. We can see these rows and these columns. Each of the rows, remember, is called a record. Each of the columns is called a field, and we can view some of the sales representatives that belong in this table. For those that are salaried, it looks like all of them are. We have their salary, what region they belong to, their mailing information, when they were hired, whether they're full-time, etc. We can also look in others. So for example, here's the orders table. It's got order ID and customer ID, and so order ID is the primary key here, customer ID is a foreign key, the transaction date, and sold by, which is actually a foreign key to the sales reps table. The other types of access objects that we have are queries. We're going to be creating a bunch of queries, and then forms. We'll be modifying an existing form.